The American Civil War changed everything about how wars were fought. The South had fewer factories, fewer railroads, and fewer ships. So, Confederate engineers built weapons that the world had never seen before. This is the story of secret submarines, exploding coal, and iron warships that made wooden navies completely useless. The year is 1861, and the Confederate States of America has a serious problem. The Union Navy is blocking every southern port. Ships carrying food, weapons, and supplies cannot get through. The South has only a handful of captured boats and some makeshift gunboats. Stephen Mallory, the Confederate Secretary of the Navy, knows they cannot win by building a bigger fleet. They need something completely different. He starts pushing for vessels that have never existed in naval history. If you are learning something new about the Old West, hit that like button and subscribe. More details coming that you will not find anywhere else. Here is another problem. The South has only 9,000 miles of railroad track. The North has 20,000 miles. Even worse, Southern railroads use different-sized tracks in different states. This means supplies have to be unloaded at state borders and loaded onto new trains. Everything moves slowly. The North can move troops and weapons by telegraph, coordinated trains, while the South struggles with basic transportation. This is where the innovation begins. Confederate leaders realize they need weapons that can strike hard without needing massive armies or huge fleets. They focus on defense, mines that can sink ships, armored vessels that can protect harbors, hidden explosives that can blow up enemy supplies from the inside. Matthew Fontaine Maury becomes one of the most important figures in this effort. He is an oceanographer who starts developing underwater explosives called torpedoes. That is what they called mines back then. Starting in 1862, his teams begin placing these weapons throughout rivers, like the James River in Virginia. Thousands of these torpedoes turn southern waterways into death traps for Union ships. And the numbers prove how effective this strategy becomes. By the end of the war, Confederate torpedoes have sunk or damaged more Union ships than any other weapon. 20 vessels destroyed by mines compared to only 9 by gunfire. The Union has to spend enormous resources just to carefully navigate waters that used to be safe. Now, let us talk about the weapon that changed naval warfare forever, the ironclad. In 1861, Confederate forces capture the Gosport Navy Yard in Norfolk, Virginia. They find the wreck of a Union ship called the USS Merrimack sitting at the bottom of the harbor. Instead of scrapping it, they decide to rebuild it into something terrifying. Workers raise the hull from the water. They construct a sloped casemate on top, made from heavy wooden timbers covered in 4 inches of iron plating. Thick oak backs the whole structure. The sloped sides are designed to make cannonballs bounce off instead of punching through. They add powerful rifled guns and a ram at the front for smashing into enemy ships. This vessel becomes the CSS Virginia. The Virginia is slow, only about 5 knots, and the engines break down constantly. None of that matters because wooden ships cannot hurt it. On March 8, 1862, the Virginia steams into Hampton Roads and attacks the Union blockade fleet. It rams the USS Cumberland and sinks it. It sets the USS Congress on fire. Cannonballs from the wooden ships bounce off the iron armor like they are nothing. The very next day, the Virginia fights the Union ironclad USS Monitor. This battle marks the first time 2 armored warships have ever fought each other. The fight ends in a draw, but everyone watching understands that wooden warships are finished. The entire world takes notice. Within decades, every major navy on Earth is building ironclad fleets. The Confederacy eventually builds over 20 ironclads from scratch. Each one is different because they are working with limited shipyards and scarce materials. The CSS Manassas becomes the first ironclad to see combat in 1861. The CSS Arkansas defends the Mississippi River. The James River Squadron protects the water approaches to Richmond. Many of these ships are destroyed by their own crews to prevent capture, including the CSS Louisiana and Mississippi, both scuttled at New Orleans in 1862. The Virginia itself is blown up in May 1862 when Norfolk falls to Union forces. Here is where things get really wild. The Confederacy builds the first combat submarine in history. The H.L. Hunley is constructed in Mobile, Alabama, in 1863. Horace Lawson Hunley leads the project. The submarine is 40 feet long, made from a converted boiler, and less than 4 feet wide inside. 8 men sit in a row and turn a hand crank to spin the propeller. There is no engine. Human power moves this vessel through the water. The Hunley carries its weapon on a long pole attached to the front. This spar torpedo holds an explosive charge. The plan is simple. Approach an enemy ship underwater, ram the explosive into the hull, back away, and detonate. The Hunley kills its own crews twice during testing. 13 men die in accidents before the submarine ever attacks an enemy. Problems include crew members leaving hatches open and the submarine failing to surface in time. Horace Hunley himself drowns in one of these disasters. Still, the Confederates keep training new crews and trying again. On February 17, 1864, the Hunley finally succeeds. In Charleston Harbor, the submarine approaches the USS Housatonic, a Union warship. The crew drives the spar torpedo into the ship's hull and detonates the 135-pound explosive charge. The Housatonic sinks. 5 Union sailors die. This is the first time in history that a submarine has sunk an enemy warship in combat. The victory costs everything. The Hunley also sinks, likely from the explosion or the chaos that follows. All 8 crew members drown. The wreck sits at the bottom of Charleston Harbor for over 100 years. When divers recover it in 2000, they find evidence of the terrible conditions inside: poor air circulation, cramped quarters, and the complete vulnerability to even small waves. Other Confederate submarines exist. The Pioneer is built in New Orleans, but scuttled before Union forces can capture it. The Hunley proves that submarines can work in warfare, even if the technology is deadly to use. Gabriel Rains and his team develop another devastating weapon: the Rains keg torpedo. These are 5-gallon kegs filled with gunpowder, fitted with contact fuses, and anchored in rivers and harbors. Thousands of them are deployed in Mobile Bay and the James River. In 1862, one of these torpedoes sinks the USS Cairo, a Union ironclad. Admiral David Farragut leads his fleet into Mobile Bay in 1864, knowing these mines are waiting. His famous order to continue despite the torpedoes becomes one of the most remembered moments of the war. The fleet pushes through and wins the battle, but the USS Tecumseh hits a mine and sinks almost instantly. The terror these weapons create is real. Some torpedoes use electrical fuses that allow remote detonation. Operators hiding on shore can wait for the perfect moment and then trigger the explosion. This adds precision to what is already a devastating defensive system. On land, Gabriel Rains adapts the torpedo concept for infantry warfare. He creates landmines, iron containers packed with gunpowder and buried with pressure-sensitive caps. During the Peninsula Campaign in 1862, thousands of these weapons are placed around Richmond and throughout the Deep South. Some of these mines remain dangerous into the 1960s when they are finally discovered in Alabama. Union generals are furious. George McClellan calls landmines barbarous. Even Confederate General James Longstreet briefly bans their use. William Sherman, during his famous March to the Sea, forces Confederate prisoners to walk ahead of his troops and dig up the mines. He considers them murder, not warfare. The Confederates experiment with rockets based on British designs from the War of 1812. These bottle-shaped explosives are fired from launchers. Testing shows they are too inaccurate for battlefield use, and they never become a major weapon. The Williams gun, a breech-loading rapid-fire weapon, appears at the Battle of Seven Pines in 1862. It can fire quick volleys, but the design has problems, and it ends up mostly guarding bridges instead of fighting on the front lines. One of the strangest Confederate weapons is the double-barreled cannon. Invented in Athens, Georgia, this gun is supposed to fire 2 cannonballs connected by a chain. The idea is that the chain will cut through enemy soldiers like a scythe. Only one is ever built. During testing, the chains snap or the cannon kills nearby livestock. After one failed use in actual combat, the project is abandoned. Standard weapons still matter enormously. The pattern 1853 Enfield rifle, a British import firing 57 caliber Minié balls, provides accuracy up to 800 yards. Nearly 900,000 of these rifles are smuggled through the Union blockade. Confederate soldiers prize them for their reliability and their bayonets, the M1857 12-pounder. Napoleon cannon becomes the workhorse of Confederate artillery. Cast in bronze, it can hit targets at 2,000 yards. The South produces these guns despite limited resources, and they dominate defensive positions throughout the war. The Lamat revolver is a cavalry favorite. This 9-shot pistol has an under-barrel shotgun for close-range fighting. Heavy and inaccurate at distance, it excels when riders clash up close. Some call it the grape-shot revolver. Now here is the sneakiest weapon of all, the coal torpedo. Thomas Edgeworth Courtenay invents this booby trap in 1863. It looks exactly like a lump of coal. Inside the hollow iron shell sits 3 to 4 ounces of gunpowder, sealed with beeswax and coated in coal dust. Confederate agents sneak these into Union coal piles at shipyards and railroad depots. When workers shovel the coal torpedo into a boiler along with regular coal, it explodes. The blast can cripple a ship or destroy a locomotive. The Confederate Torpedo Bureau, established in October 1862, produces these weapons in Richmond. Courtenay employs up to 25 volunteers who receive bounties for successful sabotage. Possible victims include the USS Chenango, whose boiler explodes in 1864. The SS Sultana sinks in 1865, killing over 1,500 people, though historians still debate the cause. The coal torpedo is so hard to detect that Union forces never know exactly how many attacks succeed. Newspapers call it an infernal machine. Other espionage tools include timed explosives designed for warehouses and supply depots. The Winans steam gun, claimed to fire 200 rounds per minute using steam power, is captured by Union forces in 1861. Testing shows it is unsuitable for combat, and it is scrapped. Confederate forces experiment with balloon reconnaissance from 1861 to 1863. Hydrogen-filled balloons carry observers who can spot enemy positions from above. Military leaders never fully appreciate the value of this technology, and the program remains small. These Confederate secret weapons accomplish real things. They sink ships and delay Union advances. They force the North to commit more soldiers and more resources to every operation. They create fear and uncertainty where the Union expects easy victories. The technology also points toward the future. Ironclads lead directly to modern battleships. The Hunley proves submarines can work. Mines and booby traps like the coal torpedo predict the guerrilla warfare and improvised explosives of the 20th century. The South loses the war anyway. The Union has more factories, more railroads, and more men. By 1865, Richmond falls, and the remaining Confederate ironclads are blown up by their own crews. The technological experiments end. What remains is the legacy. American engineers on both sides push the boundaries of what weapons can do. The Civil War transforms warfare from musket lines into something modern, with armored ships, submarines, and explosives hidden where no one expects them. If this video taught you something new about Civil War technology, smash that subscribe button and drop a comment below about which weapon surprised you most. More content is coming soon.